Can we get an enormous round of applause, please, for the...
That's honestly so kind when at least half of you have no idea what you're coming to. Guys, thank you so much for coming. This is a new organisation and it's incredibly heartwarming to see so many new people come along. We've obviously got details of all of the organisations you work at. We're super excited at the group of people we've got in the room. Before I get going on what I'm going to talk about, I want to say a huge thank you to Venture Café for hosting us tonight. I think it is one of my favourite things about London, that in 6 weeks you can go from sending an email saying, hey, I think this is a conversation we need to have, to having a room full of people like this tonight. Venture Café have been super generous in supporting it. In turn, Aria make this happen in the UK ecosystem. So a huge thank you to them. And a huge thank you to all of you for being here to hear something new launch. Is this crackly for everyone else, or is it just me? Sure, it's all fine, cool. I want to start by telling you what this organisation is. What is the Institute for Driverless Transport, or IfDT, because it's much less of a mouthful. Why are we setting up? We're setting up because we want to help support you in this room work out, or carry on working out for some of you, what the arrival of driverless cars and driverless vehicles means for you over the next few years. Means for you, means for the people you work with as organisations. We are an independent research group. We've not partnered with any of the industry operators. We've not partnered with government regulators, because we want to start asking the questions about how these vehicles, this technology, are going to affect businesses at large, people at large. So less questions about how this should be regulated, and more, what are the consequences of this for everyone else? The founding team, you'll have met a lot of us, myself, another James, Tim, who are over there. We've all been working on these social, economic, security impacts of new technology over the last few years. A lot of you, I know, read what Tim publishes already about driverless vehicles. He has a Substack called Self-Driving Insights. You probably don't read what James and I write because it's slightly drier. But we are fascinated by the impact that technology has on businesses and people in this country. And that work has given us a belief, which is that the best decisions are made when people have some space. They have the chance to be proactive. They have the chance to look forward and anticipate the consequences of a big shift rather than reacting to it once it's happened. And any of you that work in big organisations, I know we have quite a few people in government, will probably have experienced how slow it can sometimes be to react to a new technology, particularly a technology that lots of people know is coming. In a moment, I'll show you that that's exactly what's happening with AVs. I'll show you some polling data. But most of the conversations outside of this room are stuck kind of on, will it work? Or would I trust it? There's probably been more ink spilled on philosophical edge cases than there has been on the security questions, the social questions, the economic questions. They're going to be very real to people's lives over the next couple of years. Waymo last week, the US operator, did 500,000 paid rides of fully autonomous robot taxi services. Meanwhile, 6 weeks ago, the BBC was still asking about potholes and whether this technology is even going to be possible. And if you'll note, they didn't even put the prediction in their own voice. They required someone else to make the prediction that potholes would not be a completely insurmountable object. The thing is, this technology does work, and it is coming to the UK. By the end of this year, as many as 3 operators might be running in London, setting the stage for the first meaningful competition worldwide between a US operator, a Chinese operator, and a European one. And especially exciting for those of us here in London, this is one of those tech platforms where we have a British company in the race. The European operator is Wave. They are based in the UK, and they should be launching in London later this year. But what we've seen with countless waves of technology in the past is when it starts rolling out, when it starts being adopted, cost comes down massively. We get economies of scale. And there's so many reasons to think that in the next few years, autonomous transport, vehicles that don't have a human driver, are going to be the cheapest ways of getting around, going to have masses of use cases. They're going to change how people and goods move around. And in turn, that's going to change where it makes sense to live, to work, to socialize, to travel. So we're setting up to work with all of you to do research into what those shifts look like. Who's going to benefit? What do we need to guard against? What decisions do we need to take now to bring forward that successful adoption? And how do we minimize the harm to those whose livelihoods are going to be disrupted by this technology? I want to show you some polling that we did over the last few weeks. We're hugely grateful to Opinium, who ran a nationwide poll for us a couple of weeks ago. And from it, the message is sobering but clear. The public just haven't caught up with this conversation yet. When there is coverage of it, it's focused on the capabilities, not on the consequences of it. Despite the fact that this is technology that's operating in dozens of cities globally and coming to the UK this year. So this first one that I pulled up shows that 33% of people, a third, said that driverless cars have no benefits at all. It was the single most popular answer, even when we gave them a list of answers to choose from. Like, it doesn't take a huge amount of imagination to imagine ways that it might be better than the next answer. I know the text is quite small, as fewer drunk drivers driving at night. The next question said, well, would you rather a taxi with a human in or without a human in? And nearly 3/4 of people said they would rather choose a taxi that has a human driver in. That's despite now millions of miles of evidence that shows that the taxis without humans in are safer for a whole variety of reasons. Despite lots of evidence from the US that shows that people's preferences really do shift. They really do start taking taxis by choice that don't have human drivers. The conversation hasn't reached the UK yet. We asked them whether they thought that autonomous vehicles should only be operated by UK companies or allied countries. And over a third of people said that they don't know, they haven't thought about it yet. And of course they haven't. The conversation about security consequences hasn't got going yet, but that's going to change really remarkably over the next few years. If you think about the conversations that we've had about AI in the last couple of years, security and safety is going to be a really hot topic. It's worth mentioning, just yesterday, the first commercial robotaxi service launched in Europe. I won't make people guess where it is. It's in Zagreb in Croatia. It's being run by Pony AI, who are a Chinese company. Chinese operators get way less coverage in the media in the UK, but they're trialing in Switzerland, in Slovakia. They're a meaningful player here. It's not just the UK and the US companies. The point I want to make here is that this discussion hasn't yet cut through, but it shortly will. And you here are the group of people who are interested, but the rest of the country is going to start paying attention quite soon, and we think that matters. But why do we think it matters to anticipate what's going to happen? Well, I think if you look at the history of technology, when big transformations arrive that change the way people live, the way they work, either people get brought along for the ride, the general population, or they experience it as something that's being done to them. If people don't understand it, if they're not bought in, if they think they're carrying the risks, then historically, they've really resisted. And that resistance tends to be what creates costs and holds important technologies back. We think this is a technology that does have the real possibility to bring benefits. Less time spent driving, lower transport costs, productivity benefits. There are going to be disruptions, and there are going to be people who need helping out, but if we let specific conversations stop the rollout of this technology completely, we lose the opportunity for those wider diffused gains. That tends to be what happens if you bring about automation, don't have a conversation with the public about it. We think people probably need to feel this isn't just another model where big tech companies capture the upside and everyone else deals with the consequences of the change. And so we're setting up to try and start asking those questions now. For any of you who've seen our website, you'll know we have 4 areas that we think are worth paying attention to now that are going to have near-term consequences. The first of those is, of course, productivity. And how do you make sure that people feel the benefits of the labor saving that come with taking a driver out of a vehicle? But the next is social change. Who's going to gain independence that they don't have? Where do people move houses to when getting around gets easier? How quickly can new transport provide options for people who try to work at night but don't have access to public transport, don't feel safe using public transport at night? The next one is jobs. We want to have a whole work stream focused on jobs, looking at the sectors that are most exposed to job losses. Something like 1 million professional drivers in the UK at the moment. There's also millions more people who drive for work, but where driving isn't the main point of what they do. Think about social workers getting between appointments, who spend a huge part of their day driving, when they could be writing up case notes, they could be speaking to people. They're not able to do it because they're spending time driving. And then the fourth is security and geopolitics. what are bad actors going to be able to do with these cars when they're on the road? Who do we want to be able to operate them remotely, or the data that they're creating? These look like cars, but they're actually mobile fleets of cameras and sensors being remotely operated, gathering all of that data. They could be constantly recording the entrances to sensitive buildings or specific people. And those are the conversations that we want to bring you all into tonight. So I'm really excited about who's in the room. I alluded to it a bit, but there are people here from almost every type of organization that's going to be involved in this change, almost every type of organization that's going to be impacted. The whole system is represented. We have people building the technology at startups and more established operators. We've got logistics and transport operators who are thinking about deploying this. We've got academics and researchers, regulators, policy folk focusing on transport, but also more widely who are thinking about planning and skills and retraining and security questions. We've got representatives from the unions who are thinking about the drivers that are going to be the first in line for disruption. And, because it's London, we've got lawyers and insurers and investors and cyber security professionals, because that's an area where the UK has a really big competitive advantage. For those of you who saw Tim's piece yesterday, it's a place that the UK is going to have a big role to play on the international stage for autonomous vehicles. So, what's the point of this evening? I think conversation in the media, general public, can often get stuck on, I saw a robo-taxi today, I saw a Waymo, that's cool. Our goals tonight are for everyone here to get the chance to move beyond that into the consequences for jobs, for security, for accessibility and fairness, for who gains, who loses, what the impact of this is going to look like, and how we, as a group of people who are going to be shaping those decisions, get to shape how this technology plays out. There's two main ways we want to do that. Liam has talked about them a bit, but immediately, once I finish speaking, we're going to be going into 4 roundtables on those 4 themes: productivity, jobs, social change, and security. Couldn't be more excited by the people we've got to moderate those. 4 hosts who've spent a long time thinking about autonomy and the impact it's going to have. Obviously, you can't all go to all of them, so we're going to send a write-up round next week of what's discussed in those rooms with no names, just the content. And if any of you don't manage to make it into the room because there's too many people, you'll get to read those as well. For those of you who are over by the bar chatting, the coloured tags on your badges you were asked to put on when you got here, they're a really good indicator of what challenge people are most interested in talking about. So have a go and talk about it with them. Ultimately, what we want people to get out of tonight for you is to meet 2 or 3 people who aren't your colleagues, who aren't necessarily in a sector that you work in, but who are also thinking about these questions early, and so you can start to shape how this technology rolls out in the UK. For us, we're hoping to hear from you the questions that you think matter most, and that's going to shape our research going forward. So if you get the chance, come up to me, or Tim, who's at the back there, or James, who's in the white shirt at the end, or if you don't get that chance, there's a notice board just behind that screen that says, what do you think we should be working on? Write us a message, we'll read all of them, and we'd love to shape our research as a result of what we hear tonight. So use this evening to find people you wouldn't necessarily be in conversation with. We want to be a place that those conversations happen. The roundtables are going to happen in just a few minutes. A huge thanks, I really should have worked out where everyone is in the room beforehand, but a huge thanks to Jay, Eve, Jamie and Tim who are going to be leading those. So Jay is an investor at Blue Wire Capital, is going to be doing the roundtable on job displacement, which is going to be happening in this glass-fronted room here. There'll be a map in a second, you don't have to remember it all. Eve is the editor of Movement, which is an online publication focusing specifically on mobility issues, runs one of the biggest conferences in the space, and Summit of the Move conference. Eve is going to be doing the conversation on social change, which is going to happen in the corner over here. Jamie is one of the directors of SOTA, who are also one of the other partners of ARIA. ARIA are very much in the room. Jamie runs SOTA, which is the Society for Technological Advancement, helping bring on founders and technologists and researchers in the UK. He was formerly an officer in NATO, so there is almost no one better qualified to think about the security impacts of this. And then we have IfDT's very own Tim, who does a lot of our economics research, who's going to be leading the conversation in that corner about productivity. So I'd encourage you to make the most of the evening. If you'd like to head to a roundtable discussion, head over now. They'll start in about 5 minutes once we've got people into the rooms. Otherwise, feel free to grab another drink, have a conversation with someone you haven't met, and thank you again for coming along.